My brother slid a stack of papers across the table claiming heavy losses, his voice sounding like he was delivering a second eulogy for our father. I nearly signed it all away until I spotted a tiny number in the corner, a detail he should not have missed. 3 weeks later, I walked into a family meeting with a forensic accountant. My mother looked at the first line and dropped her teacup as if she had just heard her own name in a criminal verdict. My name is Camilla Green. I am 34 years old, and for the last 8 years, I have made a living by predicting the worst-case scenario. My official title at the Briarstone Meridian Group is Senior Risk Assessment Manager. It is a sterile, corporate way of saying that I get paid to look at a perfectly good business plan and point out exactly where the structural fractures will occur before the first brick is even laid. I live in a world of probability, actuarial tables, and cold, hard logic. I live in a high-rise apartment 200 miles away from the smell of salt water and old cedar that defines my hometown. But today, I was not in a glass-walled conference room. I was sitting at a scarred oak table in the back office of Harbor and Hearth, the restaurant my father, Frank Green, had built with his bare hands more than 30 years ago. The air in the office was stale, recycling the scent of yesterday's clam chowder and floor wax. Across from me sat my brother, Ethan. He looked older than I remembered, or perhaps he was just trying to look that way. His shoulders were slumped forward in a posture of defeated exhaustion that seemed heavy enough to crack the floorboards. Next to him sat his wife, Lydia. She was staring at her hands, which were clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. Every few minutes, she would reach up and dab the corner of her eye with a tissue, a gesture so rhythmic it felt like a metronome keeping time for a song I did not know the words to. "It is gone, Cammy," Ethan said, his voice rough. He pushed a thick stack of documents toward me. The paper made a dry, rasping sound against the wood. "The whole thing. It is just gone." I looked at the binder. The cover was clear plastic. The title page printed in a somber, sans serif font, Operational Assessment and Liquidation Strategy. It looked too clean for this room. This room was where Dad used to keep invoices spiked on metal needles, and where the safe was always hidden behind a calendar from the local auto body shop. "What do you mean, gone?" I asked. My voice sounded flat, detached. It was my work voice. It was the voice I used when a CEO told me their projection was solid, and I knew they were lying to themselves. "The margins," Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Since Dad passed, the supply chain costs have tripled. Just look at the price of crab. Cammy, look at the labor costs. We have been bleeding money for 11 months. I tried to plug the holes. I really did. I poured our savings into it, but we are at the end of the line." Lydia made a small, choked sound. "He has not slept in weeks. Camila, he has been trying so hard to save Frank's legacy." "We have to close," Ethan said, looking me dead in the eye. "We have to shut it down before the debts eat up the equity. If we declare bankruptcy now, the bank takes the building, they take the land, they take everything. But if we sell now, right now, we can pay off the vendors and maybe walk away with a little bit of cash, enough to keep Mom comfortable." He opened the binder to a page marked with a sticky note. The columns of numbers were aggressive. Red ink dominated the bottom line. It showed a downward trajectory that looked less like a business struggling and more like a plane nosediving into the ocean. "I have a buyer," Ethan said, lowering his voice. "A holding company. They want the location, not the brand. They will bulldoze it, probably put up condos. But they are offering a clean exit. They need an answer by Friday." He slid a pen across the table. It was a nice pen, heavy and expensive, not the cheap plastic ballpoints Dad used to chew on. "I need you to sign over your share of the operational rights," Ethan said. "It allows me to execute the sale on behalf of the trust. I will handle the liquidation, the lawyers, the final payouts. You just go back to the city. You do not need to watch them take the sign down. I will take that heat. I will handle the ugly part." "It is the humane thing to do," Lydia whispered. She looked up at me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Ethan wants to protect you from this mess." I picked up the pen. The weight of it felt cold in my hand. I looked at the signature line, Camilla Green, co-beneficiary. It made sense. Everything they were saying made perfect, logical sense. I knew the hospitality industry was brutal. I knew independent restaurants were dying by the thousand. I knew Ethan had been the one here, day in and day out, dealing with the grease traps and the health inspectors while I was reviewing merger acquisitions in a climate-controlled office. The numbers on the page were screaming disaster, a projected bankruptcy in less than 6 months. My thumb hovered over the paper. I felt a wave of exhaustion. It would be so easy to sign, to let the grief of losing Dad finally be over, to sever the last physical tie to this town that felt too small for me. Ethan was stepping up. He was being the big brother, shielding me from the wreckage. But then, a voice echoed in the back of my head. It was gravelly and smelled of tobacco and Old Spice. Don't you ever sign anything you don't understand. Millie, especially if it's family asking. Strangers want your money, but family feels entitled to it. Frank Green was a paranoid man, but he was rarely wrong about human nature. He had built this place not by trusting people, but by verifying every single delivery crate that came off the truck. I lowered the pen. I did not put it down, but I pulled my hand back. I need to read this, I said. The silence that followed was short, perhaps only a second, but it felt sharp. Ethan's expression shifted. The sorrowful brow smoothed out for a microsecond, replaced by a flash of genuine irritation, before the mask of the grieving son slid back into place. "Cammy," he said, a note of condescension creeping into his tone. "This is not a corporate merger. This is simple math. We are out of money. The buyer walks on Friday. If we wait, we lose the offer. We lose the equity. I understand that," I said, keeping my voice even. "But I cannot sign away half of Dad's life work based on a 5-minute summary. I need to review the financials." "We don't have time for a full audit," Lydia snapped. It was the first time her voice hadn't sounded like a whimpering breeze. She cleared her throat, softening immediately. "I mean, the stress is killing him. Camila, can't you just trust your brother?" "It is not about trust," I lied. "It was absolutely about trust. It is about due diligence. It is what I do for a living. Remember, if the situation is this bad, the numbers will prove it. If the numbers prove it, I will sign. I just need time." Ethan exhaled, a long, loud breath through his nose. He leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking. "How much time?" 72 hours, I said. Ethan looked at Lydia, then back at me. He tapped his fingers on the table. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Fine," he said, forcing a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. 72 hours, but Cammy, do not drag this out. The offer expires at noon on Friday. If you blow this for us, if you let Mom lose her cushion because you wanted to play risk manager, that is on you." "I understand," I repeated. "Take the binder," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Go ahead. Analyze it. You will see exactly what I see. A sinking ship." He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. Lydia stood up with him, smoothing down her skirt. They looked like a team, a united front of tragedy. "We are going to go check on Mom," Ethan said. "She is taking this hard. Try not to upset her with a bunch of questions. Okay, let her believe we have it under control." "I will," I said. They left the office. I heard the heavy door click shut, leaving me alone in the silence of the room where I used to do my homework while Dad counted the till. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the old refrigerator in the corner. My heart was beating a little faster than it should have been. I felt guilty. I felt like a cynic. Here was my brother, drowning in debt, trying to save me from the fallout, and I was treating him like a hostile negotiator. I looked down at the binder again. Operational assessment. I opened it to the first page. The executive summary. It was full of buzzwords. Market volatility. Overhead optimization. Liquidity crisis. It read like a textbook case of failure. I turned the page to the monthly breakdown. January loss, February loss, March. Heavy loss. The columns were perfectly aligned. The font was crisp. It was a beautiful report. I reached for the pen again, intending to put it in my purse. As I moved my hand, my cuff brushed against the bottom of the page. I stopped, my eyes focused on the bottom right corner of the document. The footer, usually, When you print a report from a standard accounting software or a point-of-sale system, the footer generates a specific code, a date stamp, a page number, sometimes the name of the software license holder. This page had a footer. It was in a tiny 6-point font, gray against the white paper. It read, "Generated 10/12/2024. I stared at it. The date was correct. That was today. But next to the date, in brackets, was a file path. It was sloppy. Someone had printed this from a browser or a temporary viewer and hadn't unchecked the print headers and footers box in the settings. The file path didn't point to the restaurant's server. It didn't point to the accounting software we had used for a decade. It pointed to a local drive. C, users/admin/downloads, templates, fin model, distress, V4, PDF. My heart skipped a beat, a physical painful thump in my chest. Templates. You do not use a template for a general ledger export. You export raw data. A template is something you use when you are building a presentation, when you are creating a narrative. Distress V4. Version 4. This wasn't a report of what had happened. This was a draft of a story. I looked up at the closed door. The guilt evaporated, replaced instantly by a cold, sharp clarity. The air in the room didn't smell like clam chowder anymore. It smelled like a lie. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the footer. Then I closed the binder. I had asked for 72 hours. I suddenly had the feeling that even 72 hours wasn't going to be enough time to uncover just how deep the rot went. But it was certainly enough time to start digging. Ethan wanted me to sign. He wanted to save the legacy. I stood up and shoved the heavy binder into my bag. "Okay, big brother," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's see what you are really cooking." I spent the first night of my 72-hour deadline wide awake in the guest room of my mother's house. The house was quiet, filled with the heavy, muffled silence of people pretending to sleep while worrying about money. I had the binder spread out across the antique quilt on the bed, illuminated by the harsh blue light of my laptop screen. I was not reading the numbers anymore. I was looking at the art. That was what this document was. It was art. It was a performance piece. In my line of work at Briarstone Meridian, I look at financial reports all day. Real financial reports are ugly. They are exported from ancient database software that nobody has updated since the early 2000s. The columns often misalign slightly when converted to PDF. The fonts are usually Times New Roman or Courier New. Standard defaults that scream utility. Ethan's report was beautiful. The font was a crisp, modern sans serif, likely Calibri or Helvetica. The headers were shaded in a tasteful slate gray. The columns were justified, with a precision that suggested a layout tool. Not an accounting export. The electronic signatures at the bottom of the vendor agreements were identical pixel for pixel, lacking the slight variations in pressure or angle that usually occur even with digital pads. It looked too clean. It looked like a brochure designed to sell a timeshare, not a ledger detailing the death of a family business. I needed to see the reality behind the spreadsheet. I could not exactly walk into the restaurant kitchen and start counting tickets without alerting Ethan, so I decided to audit the digital footprint. If the restaurant was truly bleeding out, the customer volume should reflect that. I opened a new browser window and pulled up the Yelp page for Harbor and Hearth. Ethan had told me, with tears in his eyes, that Tuesday nights were a graveyard. He said they were lucky to turn 4 tables. I scrolled to the reviews from last Tuesday. Best date night ever. Wrote a user named Sarah K92. The place was packed, but the wait was worth it for the cedar plank salmon. Definitely make a reservation. I checked the timestamp. The review was posted 2 days ago. I went to Instagram. I searched the location tag for the restaurant. Dozens of photos appeared, all uploaded within the last month. I saw tables crowded with wine glasses and appetizers. I saw a video story posted last Friday night, a night Ethan's report listed as having a 40% drop in revenue due to inclement weather. In the video, the background was a blur of motion. Servers were weaving through a packed dining room. The ambient noise was a roar of conversation and clinking silverware, the distinct sound of a business that was thriving, not dying. The caption read, "Friday Night Madness at the HH. So glad we got in before the rush." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. The disparity between the digital evidence and the paper report was not just an error, it was a canyon. The next morning, I needed a coffee and a reality check from a human being. I drove into town, parking my rental car a few blocks away from the main strip to avoid being seen by Ethan or Lydia. I walked into the Daily Grind, a coffee shop that had been the town's information hub since I was in high school. I was waiting for my Americano when a familiar voice called my name. Camila Green. I turned to see Becca Lewis, a girl I had sat next to in AP English 15 years ago. She was holding a tray of muffins and looking at me with wide, surprised eyes. "I heard you were back in town," Becca said, pulling me into a quick, awkward hug. "I am so sorry about your dad. I know it has been a while, but he was such a legend." "Thank you, Becca," I said. "It has been hard. We are just trying to figure out the next steps for the restaurant." Becca nodded enthusiastically. "Well, at least you do not have to worry about the business slowing down. My husband and I tried to get a table for our anniversary last Saturday, and they told us it was a 2-hour wait. Can you believe that a 2-hour wait in November?" I froze. The cup of coffee in my hand felt suddenly very hot. "Ethan told me things were a bit slow," I said, keeping my voice casual. "He is worried about the winter slump." Becca laughed. "Ethan is crazy. If that place was any busier, they would have to start putting tables on the roof. Seriously, Cammy, whatever changes he made in the kitchen are working. It is the hottest spot in 3 counties right now." I forced a smile and made small talk for another minute before excusing myself. I walked back to my car, my hands trembling slightly. A 2-hour wait. I sat in the driver's seat and opened the binder again. I turned to last Saturday's entry. Gross revenue, $2,400. Notes heavy rain, low foot traffic, kitchen equipment malfunction forced early closure. I checked the weather history on my phone. Last Saturday was clear and 45 degrees. There was no equipment malfunction. There was no low foot traffic. There was only a lie. Printed in black and white. But why? If the restaurant was making money, why hide it? Why create a fake crisis to force a sale? I drove to a quiet park overlooking the harbor and dug deeper into the expense reports. If the revenue was being suppressed, the expenses had to be inflated to make the bottom line look red. I ran my finger down the list of vendors. Most were familiar names, local fisheries, the produce distributor, the linen service, but then I saw a recurring line item that stood out. Apex Strategic Consulting LLC. The first charge appeared 11 months ago, shortly after Dad got sick. It was for $3,000. The description read, Efficiency Audit. The next month, the charge was $4,500. Description Workflow Optimization. By last month, the charge had ballooned to $9,000. Description Retainer for Crisis Management. I had never heard of Apex Strategic Consulting. Dad never hired consultants. He believed if you could not fix a problem yourself, you did not understand your business well enough to own it. I pulled out my phone and searched for the company. No website, no LinkedIn profile, no Glassdoor reviews. I found a business registry listing. It was an LLC formed 11 months ago in Delaware, a state known for corporate anonymity. There was a phone number listed on the invoice in the binder. It was a toll-free 800 number. I dialed it. I expected a receptionist. I expected a directory menu. Instead, the line clicked once, followed by 3 sharp tones. "We are sorry. The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try your call again." I hung up. It was a ghost ship. My brother was funneling tens of thousands of dollars out of the restaurant into a hole in the ground, and he was using the resulting deficit to convince me the ship was sinking. I wanted to drive straight to the restaurant, throw the binder at his head, and demand the truth. I wanted to scream at him for betraying Dad, for betraying me, but I stopped myself. Ethan had been running this game for almost a year. He had Lydia on his side. He had the emotional leverage over Mom. If I walked in there now with just a disconnected phone number and a few Instagram photos, he would spin it. He would say the Instagram photos were old. He would say the consultant was a freelancer who changed his number. He would say I was a corporate shark trying to discredit him because I did not want to share the burden of the debt. I needed more than suspicion. I needed a weapon. I needed Dana Keller. Dana was a forensic accountant I had worked with on a fraud case in Chicago 2 years ago. She was not warm, she was not friendly, she had a personality like a sheet of sandpaper, and she charged $600 an hour. She was also the best person I knew at untangling a financial mess. I sent her a text message. Urgent, family business dispute. Need your eyes on a PL. Can you talk? She called me back 4 minutes later. Camilla, she said. No pleasantries. No, how are you? Just my name and the sound of typing in the background. I have 20 minutes before a deposition. Talk to me. I am in my hometown, I said. My brother is trying to force me to sign over my share of the family restaurant. He claims we are insolvent. He gave me a binder full of reports that show we are bleeding cash, but the parking lot is full every night. Classic, Dana said, her voice dry. The poverty plea? He wants the equity cheap. Let me guess. There is a buyer lined up, a buyer who needs an answer immediately. Yes, I said. By Friday? Of course there is. That creates urgency, stops you from looking too close. Send me the documents. I only have hard copies, I said. I can scan them. Do not scan them, Dana commanded. Take high-resolution photos of the pages. I want to see the edges. I want to see the paper. And send me the raw data export if you can get it. I can't get into the system yet, I said. He has the office locked down. Send the photos then. And Camilla. Yes. Does the report have a line item for consulting or management fees? Yes, I said, a chill running down my spine at her accuracy. Apex Strategic Consulting. The number is disconnected. There is your siphon, Dana said. He is washing the profit out through a shell company to lower the net income. If the net income is low, the valuation of the business drops. He buys you out for pennies on the dollar based on the lowered valuation, then stops paying the fake consultant, and suddenly the business is profitable again. It is fraud. Camilla. Plain and simple. I sat there in the car, listening to the seagulls scream over the harbor. Hearing it laid out so clinically made it real in a way that my own intuition had not. This was not just my brother being bad at business. This was my brother stealing from me. I need to prove it, I said. He has an explanation for everything. Send me the pictures, Dana said. I will run a structural analysis on the document itself. If he is sloppy enough to use a fake consulting firm, he is sloppy enough to leave fingerprints on the paperwork. I spent the next hour photographing every single page of the binder. I sent them to Dana in a secure encrypted folder. Then I waited. I drove back to my mother's house and sat in the kitchen, drinking tea with Mom. She looked frail. She kept talking about how hard Ethan was working, how tired he looked. He is just like your father, she said, her eyes misty. He tries to carry the whole world on his shoulders. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming. He was not carrying the world. He was robbing the world. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Dana. Call me. Now. I excused myself and went out to the back porch. The wind was picking up, rattling the old wind chimes my father had hung years ago. Did you find something? I asked as soon as she picked up. I am looking at the variance analysis on page 42, Dana said. Her voice was different now. The boredom was gone, replaced by the sharp focus of a predator who has caught a scent. What is wrong with it? The math works, Dana said. The columns sum up correctly, but the font kerning is off. The what? The spacing between the letters, Dana explained. When an accounting system generates a report, it uses a fixed grid. The numbers line up because the software places them in specific coordinates. On this page, and on the 3 pages before it, the spacing shifts. It is microscopic, but it is there. It suggests that these numbers were not populated by a database. What does that mean? I asked, gripping the railing of the porch. It means someone typed them in, Dana said. She paused, letting that sink in. Camila, she continued, her voice dropping an octave. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Usually, when I see these cases, a bad manager edits a real report to hide a few things. They delete a row here, change a figure there. Okay, I said. But this is different, Dana said. I am looking at the metadata of the font rendering. The distortions are uniform across the entire document. The headers, The footers, the data fields, they all have the same artificial spacing. I do not follow, I said. What are you telling me? I am asking you a question, Dana said, and the answer is going to determine whether we are dealing with a civil dispute or a criminal conspiracy. Camilla, do you have any reason to believe that this report was ever inside the restaurant's computer system at all? I thought about the file path I had seen. Templates, Fin Model Distress V4. No, I whispered. I think it is a template. Exactly, Dana said. This is not a manipulated report. Camilla, this is a complete fabrication. He did not just change the numbers. He invented a ghost restaurant on paper that has nothing to do with the real one. We are not looking at a business that is losing money. We are looking at a work of fiction. The realization that the report was a total fabrication hit me like a slap in the face, but anger wasn't useful yet. I needed ammunition. Dana Keller was already 3 steps ahead of me, her mind operating like a finely tuned machine designed to disassemble lies. We need to build a shadow ledger, Dana told me over the phone. Her voice was crisp, cutting through the static. If the official books are fiction, we reconstruct the reality from the outside in. I need bank statements, point-of-sale data, vendor invoices, and reservation logs, anything that leaves a digital footprint he can't edit. I can't access the bank accounts, I said, pacing the small guest room. Ethan has sole signatory rights on the operating account. Dad set it up that way when he got sick. Then we go around the bank, Dana countered. Get me the reservation data, OpenTable, Reci, whatever platform you use, those systems are third-party. He can't scrub their servers. I hung up and immediately thought of Sarah Jenkins. Sarah had been the hostess at Harbor and Hearth for 5 years before she left to manage a boutique hotel on the other side of town. She still had friends on the inside. I met Sarah at a diner on the outskirts of town, far enough away that we wouldn't be spotted by anyone in Ethan's circle. When I explained what I needed, her expression shifted from polite curiosity to concern. He told you they were closing, Sarah asked, stirring her iced tea. That is insane. Cammy, I had drinks with the current floor manager, Mike, just last week. He was complaining that they were so overbooked on weekends they were turning away regulars. He said they were doing 200 covers a night easily. Can you get me the logs? I asked. Just a screenshot. Anything to prove the volume. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then pulled out her phone. She tapped out a quick message. A few minutes later, her phone pinged. She slid it across the table. It was a screenshot of the internal reservation dashboard for the past 2 weeks. Every single time slot from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock was marked in red. Booked, waitlist 14 parties. He is lying to you, Sarah said quietly. If he is saying the place is empty, he is straight up lying. I forwarded the screenshot to Dana. It was the first brick in our wall of evidence. Next, Dana set up a series of confidential interviews. She didn't want to talk to current staff who might be loyal to Ethan or afraid for their jobs. She wanted the people who had left recently, the ones who had seen the changes and walked away. We set up a conference call with Leo Moretti, a sous chef who had quit 3 months ago. Ethan changed everything about the closing procedures, Leo told us, his voice tinny over the speakerphone. Used to be, the head chef and the floor manager would sign off on the daily sales report together. It was a check and balance. About 8 months ago, Ethan stopped that. He said he wanted to handle the financials personally to streamline efficiency. After that, nobody was allowed in the back office after 10 o'clock except him. Did you notice anything else unusual? Dana asked. Any changes in spending? Leo scoffed. Yeah, that was the weird part. He was always moaning about how tight money was, telling us no overtime, cutting the linen order, but then, 2 months ago, a brand new Rational combi oven shows up. That is a $20,000 piece of equipment. I asked him how we could afford it if we were broke, and he just said he found a deal. You do not find a deal on a Rational, lady. You pay for it. Thank you, Leo, I said. That is very helpful. Dana ended the call and immediately pivoted to the documents I had sent her. Okay, look at this, she said. I had her on video chat now, and she was sharing her screen. She had the official report Ethan had given me open next to a standard industry PL statement. See this column here? Miscellaneous operational expenses. It is a catch-all category. In a healthy restaurant, this should be maybe 2% of gross revenue. In Ethan's report, it is sitting at 12%. What is in there? I asked. Garbage, Dana said. I am seeing repeated line items for media services, menu optimization, and consulting retainer. They are round numbers, 2,000, 5,000, 7,500. Real expenses are never round numbers. Camila, real expenses are $4,312.87. Round numbers are guesses, or lies. She pulled up another document. It was a vendor payment log I had managed to photograph from the binder. I ran a trace on the recipient of these payments, Dana said. Apex Strategic Consulting LLC, the same ghost company you found. Did you find who owns it? I asked. Better, Dana said, a grim smile touching her lips. I found where it lives. The LLC filing lists a registered agent address. It is not an office building. It is a pack and ship storefront in a strip mall in Dover. Dover. I frowned. That is 40 minutes away. Exactly. Far enough that nobody from town would casually drive by and notice it is just a mailbox rental, but close enough for someone to drive over once a week and pick up the checks. Dana brought up a map on the screen. She dropped a pin on the pack and ship location. Then she dropped a pin on Harbor and Hearth. But here's the kicker, she said. I cross-referenced the formation date of the LLC with the timeline of the restaurant's financial decline. Apex was incorporated on January 14th of this year. Do you know what happened on January 20th? I shook my head. The first consulting fee was paid out of the restaurant's operating account. Dana said. 6 days later, he didn't hire a consultant to fix the problem. Camila, he created a company to create the problem. I stared at the screen. The dates lined up perfectly. Ethan had started siphoning money almost immediately after Dad's health took a turn for the worse. He knew Dad wasn't checking the books anymore. He knew I was hundreds of miles away. He is not just skimming, I said, the realization settling in my chest like a lead weight. He is manufacturing a loss. Precisely, Dana said. He is paying himself to bankrupt the company. He moves the money from the left pocket to the right pocket, but on paper, the left pocket looks empty. Then he shows you the empty left pocket and says, Look, we have to sell the pants. But why? I asked. If the restaurant is making money, why kill it? Why not just keep running it and take the profit? Because of the equity, Dana said. Right now, you own half. If the restaurant is worth $2 million, your share is $1 million. But if the restaurant is failing and swimming in debt, maybe the valuation drops to $200,000. He buys you out for $100,000, doing you a favor. And the minute the ink is dry, Apex Strategic Consulting disappears. The expenses vanish. The profit margin shoots back up to 20%. And suddenly, he owns 100% of a gold mine for the price of a used car. My hands were shaking. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was horrified. This wasn't just greed. This was a calculated, methodical dismantling of our family's trust. Ethan wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing the truth. There is one more thing, Dana said. Her voice softened slightly, losing some of its clinical edge. I ran a check on the file metadata of the report he gave you, the one you found the path for. The template. Yes, I told you it didn't come from the accounting system, but I found something else. There are no audit logs. In a real financial system, QuickBooks, 0, toast every time you change a number. The system records it, who changed it, when, and what the old number was. It is impossible to delete those logs without admin access to the server backend. And this file? It is a flat PDF, Dana said. It has no history. It came into existence yesterday morning. It was typed into a Word document or an Excel sheet and then saved as a PDF. It is not a financial record. Camila, it is a brochure, a prop. So, what do we do? I asked. I confront him. No, Dana said sharply. Not yet. If you confront him now, he will shred everything. He will claim it was a mistake, an error in the export. He will cover his tracks. We need to nail him down. We need to find out who is picking up the mail at that box in Dover. I can drive there, I said. Too risky, Dana said. If he sees you, game over. But we can look at the checks. Do you have a photo of the canceled checks? No, I said. Those weren't in the binder. Of course they weren't, Dana said. Because the back of the check shows who endorsed it. If Apex is a shell, someone has to be signing those checks to deposit them. How do I get them? We need access to the online banking, Dana said. You said you don't have the password. I don't. Does anyone else? Dana asked. Anyone besides Ethan? I thought about it. Dad had always been old school. He kept passwords written down in a little black notebook locked in the safe at the restaurant. Ethan had the combination, but then I remembered something. Dad also had a backup, a fail-safe. He didn't trust digital clouds. He trusted physical redundancy. Mom, I said. Mom might have it. Dad used to give her a copy of everything just in case. Go to your mother, Dana said. Do not tell her what we are doing. Do not break her heart yet. Just find out if she has the banking credentials. I found Mom in the garden, pruning the hydrangeas. She looked up and smiled, but the worry lines around her eyes were deep. How are you doing, sweetie? She asked. Have you talked to Ethan? I am looking over the papers. Mom, I said gently. I just wanted to double-check some of the older records. Did Dad ever leave a list of the account passwords with you for the bank? Mom frowned, thinking. Oh, he had that little book. He always told me. Elaine, if anything happens to me, the book is in the cookie jar. Can you believe that the ceramic bear in the kitchen? I felt a surge of affection for my father's simple, stubborn security measures. The cookie jar, top shelf, Mom said. Behind the flour. I went into the kitchen. I stood on a chair and reached for the ceramic bear. It was dusty. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled among a few stale packets of sugar, was a small, leather-bound notebook. I opened it. Dad's handwriting was shaky but legible. Harbor Operating Act User F. Green Owner, Pass Mackerel 888. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled out my phone and logged into the bank's mobile app. I entered the username. I entered the password. It loaded. I was in. I navigated to the transaction history. I filtered for check images. I scrolled until I found a payment to Apex Strategic Consulting for $8,000, dated last month. I tapped the image to flip it over. The endorsement on the back was a scrawl. It wasn't Ethan's signature. It was messy, almost illegible, but underneath the signature, someone had printed the name for the mobile deposit, Carter Vance. I stared at the name, Carter Vance. I knew that name. Carter Vance was Ethan's best friend from high school. The one who had moved away years ago to work in finance, but had recently moved back. I had seen him at the restaurant a few times, sitting in the back booth, laughing with Ethan. Gotcha, I whispered. I took a screenshot and sent it to Dana. Her reply came back 10 seconds later. Bingo, we have the bag man. It is not just embezzlement anymore, Camilla. It is conspiracy. One more thing, Dana texted. Look at the refunds section in the POS data you got from Sarah. Are there a lot of voids? I went back to the screenshot Sarah had sent. I zoomed in. Void comp $450. Reason manager meal. Void comp $320. Reason spilled wine. Void comp $500. Reason customer complaint. The list went on and on, hundreds of dollars a night being voided out of the system. He is voiding cash tables. I texted Dana. Customer pays cash. He pockets the cash, then voids the ticket in the system so it looks like the sale never happened. That lowers the recorded revenue. Classic skimming, Dana replied. And very illegal. The taxman would be very interested in this. I sat at the kitchen table, the little black notebook open in front of me. The evidence was piling up. The fake consultant, the inflated expenses, the voided cash transactions, the ghost company run by his best friend. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a heist. And the victim wasn't just me. It was Mom. It was Dad's legacy. This is not a failing business, I said to myself, echoing Dana's words. This is a crime scene. The phone rang. It was Ethan. Hey, Cammy, he said. His voice was bright, falsely cheerful. Just checking in. You about done with that review? The buyer is getting antsy. I took a deep breath. I channeled every ounce of professional detachment I had learned in 10 years of corporate risk management. Almost there, Ethan, I said smoothly. Just verifying a few last details. I will have an answer for you soon. Great, he said. Don't overthink it. It is pretty black and white. You are right, I said, looking at the signature of Carter Vance on the screen. It is very black and white. I hung up. Dana sent one final message. We have the how. Now we need the why. Why now? Why the rush? People don't steal this aggressively unless they are on a clock. Find out what Ethan is really planning. The digital map on Dana's screen looked less like a financial flowchart and more like the schematic of a parasitic infection. She had spent the last 6 hours tracing the pathways of every cent that had left the restaurant's operating account in the last 11 months, and the resulting web was a testament to my brother's desperation and his audacity. It is a classic wash cycle, Dana said, her voice tinny through the laptop speakers. She used her cursor to circle a cluster of transactions. He moves the cash from Harbor and Hearth to Apex Strategic Consulting. That is the first hop. We already knew that. But I followed the money out of Apex. I leaned closer to my screen, squinting at the lines connecting the boxes. Where does it go? It fragments, Dana explained. About 40% of it stays in the Apex account, presumably to cover Carter Vance's fee for setting up the shell. But the other 60%, it moves again within 48 hours. It goes to a digital wallet service, then to a generic holding account, and finally, it lands here. She clicked on a box at the bottom of the screen. L.G. Design Studio. Lydia, I whispered. Does his wife run a design business? Dana asked. She has a hobby studio, I said, feeling a fresh wave of nausea. She makes custom greeting cards and table centerpieces. She makes maybe $500 a year at the Christmas craft fair. Well, Dana said dryly, according to this, her studio has invoiced Apex Strategic Consulting for creative direction, totaling nearly $45,000 this year. It was a closed loop. Ethan was stealing from the restaurant, washing it through his best friend's fake company, and depositing it right back into his wife's pocket. They were cannibalizing my father's legacy to fund their own lifestyle, all while crying poverty to me. But then Dana pointed to another line, a thin red thread that didn't go to Lydia. It went back to Carter Vance, but not to the Apex account. It went to a personal account. Who is this guy really? Camila, Dana asked. I see the payments. I see the LLC. But friends do not usually commit felonies for each other just for a small cut. There is a lot of trust here, or leverage. I closed my eyes and let my memory drift back. Carter Vance. I hadn't thought about him in years, but now the image was sharp. High school. Carter was the guy who always had the newest sneakers but no job. He was the one who sold pirated DVDs out of his locker. He was Ethan's shadow. I remembered a day about 6 months ago, when I was home for a weekend visit. I had stopped by the restaurant to say hello. The door to the back office was slightly ajar. I heard Ethan laughing a low, conspiratorial laugh I rarely heard anymore. I had peeked in. Ethan was sitting behind the desk, and Carter was sitting on the edge of it, flipping a coin. When they saw me, the laughter died instantly. Carter had hopped off the desk, smoothed his jacket, and flashed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just talking fantasy football. Cammy, he had said. He is an enabler. I told Dana. He is the guy Ethan calls when he wants to do something stupid but doesn't have the guts to do it alone. Carter provides the mechanism. Ethan provides the money. Well, their mechanism is getting sloppy, Dana said. Look at the invoicing structure. She pulled up a spreadsheet comparing the consulting fees month over month. January $3,000, February $3,500. March $4,000. It goes up by exactly $500 every month until it caps at $8,000. That is not how billing works. You do not accidentally incur costs in perfect $500 increments. This is a salary payout schedule. They are treating the theft like a paycheck. I stared at the numbers. It was so arrogant. They didn't even try to make it look random. They assumed nobody would ever look this deep. They assumed I would just sign the papers and walk away. "There is something worse," Dana said. Her tone shifted. The clinical detachment was gone, replaced by a note of genuine professional alarm. "I ran a title search on the restaurant property, just to be thorough. I wanted to see if there were any liens we didn't know about." "There shouldn't be," I said confidentially. "Dad paid off the mortgage in 1998. We had a bonfire on the beach. He burned the note. It was one of the happiest days of his life." "I am sure it was," Dana said softly. "But there is a new mortgage. Camilla." The air left the room. "What?" "Recorded 6 months ago," Dana said. "A secured business loan against the deed. $300,000. Lender is a private equity firm based in Chicago. High interest. Short term." "That is impossible," I stammered. "Ethan can't take out a mortgage on the building without my consent. We are co-trustees. The deed requires both signatures for any encumbrance over $50,000. Dana didn't say anything. She just opened a new file and dragged it onto the shared screen. It was a loan agreement. Secured promissory note. I scanned the document, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I saw Ethan's signature, bold and heavy in blue ink, and then, right next to it, I saw mine. Camilla Green. It wasn't wet ink. It was a digital stamp. A DocuSign certification code was printed underneath it. "I never signed this," I said, my voice shaking. "Dana, I swear to you, I never saw this document. I was in Seattle 6 months ago. I haven't signed anything related to the property since the probate hearings." "I believe you," Dana said. I checked the IP address in the audit trail of the electronic signature. The signature was executed from a computer with an IP address located in guess where? "The restaurant," I whispered. "The back office," Dana confirmed. "He used your old credentials, or he reset your access. He logged in as you, signed the loan as you, and took the money." I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just skimming off the top. This wasn't just stealing profit. Ethan had leveraged the building itself. He had put the physical structure of harbor and hearth, the floors my father swept, the walls he painted at risk of foreclosure. "Where is the $300,000, I asked. "Gone," Dana said. "It hit the operating account and was drained out within 10 days. Most of it went to Apex. Some went to capital improvements that I can't verify. But here's the terrifying part. Camilla, this is why he is pressuring you to sell right now." She paused, making sure I was listening. "The loan is a balloon note. It comes due in full in 30 days. He has no way to pay it back. He spent the money. If he defaults, the lender takes the building, and the fraud is exposed. The bank will investigate. They will see the forged signature, and he goes to prison for a long time." I pieced the puzzle together in my head. It was a house of cards that was already on fire. "So the sale," I started. "The sale is his escape hatch," Dana finished. "He found a buyer, this holding company, who is willing to pay just enough to cover the debt and leave a tiny bit over. But to sell the building, he needs a clear title. He needs you to sign the liquidation agreement. The agreement he gave you probably contains a clause that retroactively ratifies all prior management decisions and debts. He wants me to validate the forgery." I realized, if I sign the transfer papers, I am legally accepting the debt as valid. I am effectively saying, "Yes, I agreed to this loan." He pays off the bank with the sale money. The loan disappears. The forgery is buried, and he walks away clean. "And you," Dana added, "you walk away with nothing, thinking the business just failed. He paints you as the sister who gave up, the one who let the legacy die because she didn't want to fight for it. He gets to play the tragic hero who tried his best, while you get to be the villain who signed the kill order." I sat back in the chair, the weight of the betrayal crushing me. It was so much more personal than I had realized. Ethan didn't just want the money. He wanted the narrative. He wanted to destroy my reputation to save his own skin. He was willing to gaslight the entire family, to look our mother in the eye and lie about Dad's work, just to cover up his own incompetence and greed. I looked at the digital signature on the screen, my name, stolen and used to destroy what I loved. "He thinks he is smart," I said, my voice hardening. "He thinks because I live in the city, because I work in corporate risk, that I am soft. He thinks I will just sign to avoid the conflict. He is banking on your emotions, Dana said. He brought your mother to that meeting for a reason. He knows you won't want to upset her. He is right, I said. I don't want to upset her. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting over the harbor, turning the water a deep, bruised purple. But I am not going to protect him anymore, I said. What is the play? Dana asked. We have enough for a police report right now. Fraud, forgery, grand larceny. We could have him in handcuffs by dinner time. No, I said instantly. If we arrest him now, the story becomes about the scandal. The restaurant gets seized as evidence or assets. Mom dies of a broken heart seeing her son in the news. The town remembers Frank Green's legacy as a crime scene. So what do you want to do? I want him to admit it, I said. I want him to say it in front of the family. I want Mom to see who he really is, not what the police say he is, and I want to save the restaurant. That is a tall order, Dana warned. The loan is due in 30 days. I have money, I said. I have savings. I can cover the balloon payment if I have control of the accounts, but I need to get him out. Completely. Okay, Dana said. Then we don't tell him we know. Not yet. No, I agreed. We let him think he has won. He wants a signature, I will give him a meeting. I picked up my phone. Ethan had sent me 3 texts in the last hour, asking for an update, thinking about you. Cammy. Hope you're making the right choice for Mom. I stared at the message. The manipulation was so transparent now. I typed a reply. I have reviewed the numbers. Let's meet on Sunday. Bring Mom. I think I'm ready to sign. I hit send. He is going to bring the papers, Dana said. He is going to have a notary ready. Let him, I said. I am bringing something too. I will prepare the exhibit binder, Dana said. Timeline, bank traces, the forgery analysis. We will walk in there with a nuclear warhead in a briefcase. Dana, I said, pausing before I cut the connection. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, she said. Sunday is going to be ugly. When you corner a rat, especially a rat that thinks it is a lion, it bites. I know, I said. I am counting on it. I closed the laptop. The room was dark now. I didn't turn on the light. I sat in the shadows, thinking about the brother I used to have, the one who taught me how to skip stones, the one who protected me from bullies on the playground. That brother was gone. The man waiting for me on Sunday was a stranger wearing his face, and I was about to introduce him to the sister he didn't know he had. The vibration of my phone on the bedside table sounded like a warning alarm. It was Saturday morning, 24 hours before the deadline. I picked it up. The message was from Ethan. Sunday at 1 o'clock. Mom is making pot roast. She really wants us to get this settled so she can stop worrying. See you there. I stared at the screen. It was a masterclass in manipulation. By setting the meeting over Sunday lunch, he was grounding the negotiation in family tradition. By mentioning Mom's pot roast, he was invoking the ghost of our childhoods. And by explicitly stating that Mom wanted this settled, he was preemptively casting any objection I raised as an attack on her peace of mind. He was using our mother as a human shield. I took a deep breath and typed my reply. I needed to sound beaten. I needed him to believe that the fight had already left me. Okay, I will be there. I just want to do what is best for everyone. If the numbers say we have to sell, then I guess we have to sell. I hit send. The response came back instantly. A thumbs up emoji. He took the bait. He thought I was folding. He thought the corporate risk manager had looked at his terrifying spreadsheet, panicked, and decided to cut her losses. He had no idea that while he was planning a victory lunch, I was preparing an indictment. I spent the next 2 hours on a video call with Dana. She had compiled everything into a single, devastating PDF. But for tomorrow, we needed physical props. People like Ethan do not fear data, Dana said, holding up a file folder on her screen. They fear exposure. If you just talk about numbers, he will talk over you. He will use emotional buzzwords. You need to put something on the table that he cannot talk his way out of. I have a printer here, I said. Tell me how to organize it. Color code it, Dana instructed. Blue for the bank statements, Red for the discrepancies, yellow for the shell company evidence. When you lay them out, I want it to look like a police board. Make it visual. Make it undeniable. I printed the documents. The stack was thick. The blue pile. The real reservation logs from OpenTable showing a full house versus Ethan's fabricated spreadsheets showing an empty dining room. The yellow pile. The corporate registration for Apex Strategic Consulting, linking it to the mailbox in Dover, and the endorsed check with Carter Vance's signature. The red pile. The loan documents. The $300,000 mortgage taken out against the building, featuring the digital forgery of my signature. This red pile, Dana said, her voice serious. This is your nuclear option. You do not lead with this. You save it for when he tries to run. I understand, I said. And Camilla, Dana added, I need you to secure your flank. If he realizes he is cornered, he might try to move the money or sign the sale agreement before you can legally stop him. You need an injunction ready to go. She was right. I grabbed my coat and drove into town to see Marcus Thorne. Marcus was a real estate attorney who had handled the deed transfer when Dad passed away. He was 60 years old, wore suspenders, and his office smelled like old law books and peppermint. He wasn't a shark, but he was honest, which in this situation was exactly what I needed. I didn't show him everything. I didn't want to implicate Ethan in a crime just yet. I just showed him the loan document. Mr. Thorne, I said, sliding the paper across his mahogany desk. I need you to look at this signature. He put on his reading glasses and peered at the document. He frowned. That is your name. Camilla, he said. But that is not your signature. You loop your C differently, and you never use a digital stamp for a deed restriction. Your father would roll over in his grave. I didn't sign it, I said. I need you to draft an emergency motion to freeze the title. I am not filing it yet, but I want it signed and ready to be filed at the courthouse the minute the doors open on Monday morning if things go wrong tomorrow. Marcus looked at me over the rim of his glasses. He saw the tension in my jaw. He saw the lack of sleep in my eyes. Is Ethan in trouble? He asked quietly. Ethan is confused, I said carefully. He thinks he owns things that do not belong to him. I am just going to clarify the boundaries. Marcus nodded slowly. He didn't ask any more questions. He drafted the motion. I signed the affidavit. Now, no matter what Ethan tried to pull, even if he forged my signature on the sale documents. We had a sworn statement predating the sale, stating that I did not consent. I left his office feeling a little lighter. The legal safety net was in place. Now I needed to close the loop on the operation. I drove to the employee parking lot behind Harbor and Hearth. I had arranged to meet Mike, the floor manager, during his break. Mike was smoking a cigarette by the dumpster, looking tired. When he saw me, he straightened up and stomped it out. Miss Green, he said, I didn't think I'd see you here. I am not here. Mike, I said, this conversation never happened, but I need to ask you something. You told me earlier that Ethan took over the financial reporting. Yeah, Mike said, crossing his arms. About 8 months ago, locked us all out of the back office. Has he done anything with the computer system recently? I asked. Specifically, the admin access? Mike laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Funny you ask. Just yesterday, I tried to log into the inventory management system to order napkins. My password didn't work. I asked Ethan about it, and he said he was migrating the server, but I saw the notification on the screen before he closed it. What did it say? It said admin rights transferred, Mike said. He changed the recovery email. It used to be the restaurant's general info address. He changed it to a Gmail account, something like hhliquidation@gmail.com. I felt a chill. Liquidation. He wasn't just planning to sell. He was planning to erase the history. If he transferred the admin rights to a private email, he could delete the entire database remotely once the sale went through. He could wipe the reservation history, the sales data, the employee time logs. He could delete the evidence of his theft with a single click. Thank you, Mike, I said. If anyone asks, I wasn't here. Good luck, Miss Green, Mike said. Whatever's going on, I hope you save the place. We love working here, but the vibe lately, it feels like a funeral. I drove back to my mother's house. The pieces were all there, I had the motive, I had the method, I had the proof. And now I had confirmation that he was in the final stages of a cover-up. But I needed one last thing. I needed him to be confident. I needed him to walk into that meeting thinking I was an emotional wreck, so focused on the past that I wouldn't look at the present. I sat in my car in the driveway and called him. "Hey, Cammy," he answered on the second ring. "You ready for tomorrow?" "I think so," I said, letting my voice wobble just enough. "I was just looking through some of Dad's old things. I found that picture of us from the opening day. Do you remember? You were wearing that ridiculous bow tie?" Ethan chuckled. It sounded genuine, which made it worse. "Yeah, I looked like a waiter at a penguin wedding. I want to make sure we keep some things," I said. "If we sell the building, can we make sure we keep the framed $1 bill from behind the bar and the sign I don't want the new owners to throw them in the trash?" "Of course. Cammy," Ethan said, his voice dripping with soothing condescension. "We will keep all the memorabilia. I will put it in the contract. We are not erasing Dad. We are just making a smart business move." "Okay," I said. "That makes me feel better. Thanks, Ethan. You are right. It is just a building. We have to be practical." "Exactly," he said. "You are being smart. I am proud of you. See you tomorrow." He hung up. I lowered the phone. "I am proud of you." The audacity of it made my blood run cold. He was proud that he had successfully tricked me. He was proud that he had manipulated his little sister into signing away her inheritance so he could cover his gambling debts or bad investments or whatever hole he had dug for himself. I went inside and went straight to my room. I laid the color-coded documents out on the bed. Dana sent me a final text. "Strategy for tomorrow. Do not make a speech. Do not accuse him of being a thief. Not at first. If you accuse him, he will get defensive and make a scene to shut down the meeting. He will storm out. Then what do? I texted back. "You ask questions." Dana replied. "Specific, technical questions. Liars prepare for the big picture. They have a story for, why are we losing money? They do not have a story for, why does this specific transaction ID not match the bank statement? Ask these 3 questions. 1. Why does the point-of-sale system show $12,000 in revenue last Saturday, but your report shows $2,002? Who is Apex Strategic Consulting, and why do they share an address with a mailbox rental center? 3. Why is there a $300,000 mortgage on the building signed by me? When I was in Seattle on that date, ask them in that order. Peel the onion. By the time you get to the 3rd question, he won't be able to speak. I memorized the questions. I rehearsed them in the mirror. I watched my own face. I had to look calm. I had to look like the sister he expected until I wasn't. I packed the documents into my leather satchel. I placed the yellow folder at the bottom, the blue in the middle, and the red on top, concealed inside a plain manila envelope. Then I reached for my pen. It was a Mont Blanc fountain pen my father had given me when I got my risk management certification. For signing the big deals, he had said. I held it up to the light. The black resin shone. The gold nib was sharp. Tomorrow, Ethan expected me to use this pen to sign a liquidation agreement. He expected me to sign away Harbor and Hearth. I slipped the pen into the pocket of my blazer. I would use it. All right. But I wasn't going to sign anything. I was going to use it to point at the line on the paper where his life was about to fall apart. I turned off the light and lay down in the dark. I could hear my mother downstairs, humming as she prepped the vegetables for the pot roast. She was happy. She thought her children were coming together to save the family. She was half right. One of us was coming to save the family. The other was coming to destroy it. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come. All I could see was the date on the calendar. Sunday, Judgment Day. The smell of slow-cooked pot roast filled my mother's dining room, a scent that usually signaled comfort and lazy Sunday afternoons. Today, however, it smelled like a trap. The table was set with the good china, the plates with the gold rims that Mom only brought out for Christmas and funerals. In a way, I suppose this was appropriate. If Ethan had his way, we were burying the family business today. I arrived precisely at 1 o'clock. I did not come alone. When I walked in, Ethan was already pouring wine. He looked up. his smile freezing halfway up his face when he saw the woman standing next to me. Dana Keller wore a charcoal gray blazer and carried a leather briefcase that looked heavy enough to crush a skull. "Who is this?" Ethan asked, the bottle of Merlot hovering over a glass. "This is Dana," I said, keeping my voice light. "She is a specialist in business valuation. Since we are talking about selling Dad's legacy, I wanted a second pair of eyes to make sure we are getting a fair deal. I knew you would want that too." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he couldn't object without looking suspicious in front of Mom. Mom came out of the kitchen. Wiping her hands on her apron, she looked frail, her eyes darting nervously between us. "Oh, a guest," Mom said, her voice trembling slightly. "I can set another place." "No need. Mrs. Green," Dana said. Her tone was polite but entirely devoid of warmth. "I am just here to observe the paperwork." We sat down. The tension in the room was so thick, it felt like physical pressure against my eardrums. Lydia sat next to Ethan, clutching a handkerchief. She looked pale. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Bob were there too, sitting at the far end of the table, looking uncomfortable. They were the witnesses Ethan had brought to validate his narrative of the grieving, burdened son. We ate in silence for 20 minutes. The clinking of silverware against porcelain sounded like gunshots. Finally, Ethan pushed his plate away. He reached under his chair and pulled out the familiar clear plastic binder. He slid it across the white tablecloth toward me. It stopped right next to my wine glass. "We need to do this, Cammy," Ethan said. His voice was low, laced with a practiced sorrow. "I know it is hard. It breaks my heart too. But the buyer needs the signature by tomorrow morning or the deal is off. If we don't sign, the bank forecloses next month. Do not let Dad's legacy become a pile of debt. Sign it, and we can all move on." Lydia sniffed loudly. "Please, Camila, for your mother's sake." I looked at the binder. Then I looked at my mother. She was staring at her hands, her shoulders hunched as if she were waiting for a blow. "I agree," I said. "We need to protect the legacy." Ethan uncapped a pen and held it out to me. "Here, just right there on the bottom line." I did not take the pen. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder. It was not thick, but it was vibrant. I opened it and laid 3 distinct stacks of paper on the table, one blue, one yellow, one red. "I am not signing that, Ethan," I said. The room went dead silent. "What?" Ethan asked, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. "Cammy, we talked about this. You saw the numbers. The restaurant is losing money." "The restaurant is not losing money," I said. I picked up the blue stack. "This is a cross-reference of the point-of-sale system data against the report you gave me." "I don't know what you think you found," Ethan said, his face reddening. "But the system has been glitchy. We have had software errors." "Is that right?" I asked. I locked eyes with him. "Then explain to me why last Saturday, the point-of-sale system recorded $12,400 in gross revenue, but the report you just handed me claims we made $2,000. Ethan blinked. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "That is a $10,000 difference in a single night," I continued. "And it is not a glitch. I have the reservation logs from OpenTable. Every seat was full. You are deleting cash transactions. Ethan, you are erasing revenue to make the business look like a failure." "That is ridiculous," Lydia snapped, her voice shrill. "Why would he do that? He has been working himself to death to save this place. To lower the valuation," Dana spoke up. Her voice was calm, cutting through the emotion like a scalpel. "If the business looks like it is failing, he can buy his sister out for pennies on the dollar. Then, once he owns 100%, the glitches disappear and he keeps all the profit." "You are a liar," Ethan spat, pointing a finger at Dana. "Who even are you, Mom? Tell her to leave." Mom looked up, her eyes wide and terrified. "Ethan, what are they talking about?" "I am asking you a question. Ethan," I said, raising my voice over his. I picked up the yellow stack. "Question number 2. Who is Apex Strategic Consulting?" Ethan froze. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a magic trick. "I noticed we have been paying them nearly $8,000 a month," I said, "for efficiency audits. But when I look them up, they don't have an office. They have a mailbox at a shipping center in Dover, and the checks they are being endorsed by Carter Vance. I threw the photo of the check onto the table. It landed face up, Carter's signature plain as day. Carter, Aunt Sarah whispered. Ethan's friend Carter. Why is the restaurant funneling money to your high school best friend, Ethan? I asked. And why does the money leave Carter's account and end up in a design studio run by your wife? I looked at Lydia. She wasn't sniffing anymore. She was staring at the tablecloth, her hand gripping her napkin so hard her knuckles were purple. That is a lie, Lydia screamed, standing up. Her chair scraped violently against the floor. I worked for that money. I did consulting marketing. You designed greeting cards, Dana said, not looking up from her notes. And you invoiced a shell company $45,000 for it. I am leaving, Lydia announced. She grabbed her purse. I am not sitting here and being attacked by this corporate witch. Ethan, are you coming? She turned to bolt for the door. Dana didn't move. She simply placed a single sheet of paper on the table. I wouldn't leave. Mrs. Green, Dana said. That is a copy of a notarized invoice with your signature on it. Billing for services that were never rendered. That is technically wire fraud. If you walk out that door, the next conversation we have will be with the district attorney. Lydia stopped. She looked at Ethan, panic wild in her eyes. She slowly sank back into her chair. Mom made a sound. It was a low, keening noise, like an animal in pain. She was gripping the edge of the table, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Ethan, Mom wheezed. Tell me it isn't true. Tell me you didn't steal from your father's restaurant. I didn't steal, Ethan shouted. He slammed his fist on the table, making the wine glasses jump. I earned it. I am the one here every day. Mom, I am the one plunging the toilets and dealing with the drunks and sweating in that kitchen while she... He pointed a shaking finger at me. She is off in the city living the high life. So you decided to take a loan? I asked. I picked up the red stack. This was it. The kill shot. What loan? Mom whispered. Question number 3, I said, my voice cold as ice. There is a $300,000 mortgage recorded against the building. It was signed 6 months ago. We don't have a mortgage, Mom said, shaking her head confusedly. Frank paid it off. We do now, I said, and the document has 2 signatures on it, Ethan's and mine. I held up the loan agreement. But I didn't sign this, I said. I was in Seattle. Ethan logged into the system using my old credentials and forged my electronic signature. He took $300,000 of equity out of this house, out of Dad's legacy, and he spent it. You forged her name. Mom looked at Ethan, her face crumbling. The denial was breaking. She was seeing the stranger wearing her son's face. I had to, Ethan yelled. He stood up, knocking his chair over. He wasn't pretending to be the sad, burdened brother anymore. He was red-faced, cornered, and vicious. You don't understand business, he screamed at me. I needed capital. I was going to pay it back once we expanded. But you are just like Dad, too scared to take risks. You sit in your ivory tower and judge me. You abandoned this family. Camila, you left. You have not been here for 8 years. You do not deserve half of this place. You deserve nothing. I deserve the truth, I said, remaining seated. And so does Mom. The truth, Ethan laughed, a manic, ugly sound. The truth is that I am the one who kept this place alive while Dad was dying. I am the one who watched him wither away while you were busy getting promoted. I took what was owed to me. That money was my salary for dealing with the misery of this town. It wasn't a salary, Dana said. It was embezzlement, and the loan that is bank fraud. Shut up, Ethan screamed at her. You think you can come into my house and threaten me? I will sell this place. I will sell it tomorrow, and there is nothing you can do about it because I am the operating manager. Actually, I said, you are not. I pulled the affidavit from Marcus Thorne out of my bag. This is an emergency injunction, I said. It states that as a 50% owner, I do not consent to the sale, and it includes evidence of financial malfeasance. If you try to sell the building tomorrow, this gets filed. And if this gets filed, the police get the file on the forgery too. Ethan stared at the paper, His chest was heaving. He looked at Lydia, who was weeping silently into her hands. He looked at Mom, who had turned pale gray and was clutching her chest, gasping for air. "Mom," I said, standing up quickly. "Mom." Mom didn't answer. She slumped sideways, her hand grasping for the water glass and knocking it over. The red wine spilled across the white tablecloth, spreading like a bloodstain between us. "Call 911, Aunt Sarah screamed. Ethan stood there, frozen, staring at the spreading stain. He didn't move to help her. He just looked at me, his eyes full of hatred. "Look what you did," he whispered. "You came back, and you destroyed us." "No, Ethan," I said, rushing to Mom's side and checking her pulse. "I didn't do this. You did." The paramedics had left 20 minutes ago, leaving behind the smell of antiseptic rubbing alcohol that clashed violently with the lingering scent of the pot roast. They had stabilized Mom, attributing her collapse to an acute panic attack and a spike in blood pressure. But they advised rest. She was lying on the sofa in the living room now, a cold compress on her forehead, her eyes squeezed shut as if she could block out the reality of her children tearing each other apart. But the silence didn't last. The moment the ambulance pulled away, the house erupted. "You happy now?" Aunt Sarah hissed at me, standing between me and the sofa like a guard dog. "You come back here after 8 years, throw a grenade onto the dinner table, and nearly kill your mother. Is that what they teach you in the city? How to destroy people? I am not the one who forged a signature." "Sarah," I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline, "I am trying to stop him from selling the roof over her head." "He was trying to save it," Uncle Bob chimed in, though he looked less certain, his eyes darting toward the pile of evidence on the dining table. "Ethan has been the man of the house. Camila, you don't know the pressure he has been under." Ethan, who had been pacing the kitchen like a caged tiger, seized on the opening. He stormed into the living room, his face flushed not with shame, but with indignation. "Exactly," Ethan said, gesturing wildly. "You call it stealing, I call it survival. I call it compensation." "Compensation?" I repeated, incredulous. "You took $300,000 out of the equity. Ethan, you funneled $50,000 to your wife through a shell company. That is not compensation. That is a crime. It is back pay." Ethan shouted, "I have worked 80-hour weeks for 3 years. I missed vacations. I missed anniversaries. I kept that kitchen running while Dad was sick, and you were off climbing the corporate ladder. I deserved a salary that reflected my value. If I had to get creative to get it because the cash flow was tight, then so be it. It was my right as the operating partner." "That is not how the law works," Dana said. She was standing by the window, calm and immovable. "You are a fiduciary. Ethan, you have a legal obligation to act in the best interest of the trust. Paying yourself secret bonuses through a fraudulent vendor isn't creative accounting. It is embezzlement. And signing your sister's name on a loan document, that is identity theft and bank fraud. We are not having a moral debate here. We are discussing felonies. Nobody is going to prison." Mom's voice was weak, coming from the sofa. She struggled to sit up, pushing the compress aside. She looked at Ethan with a heartbreaking mix of love and disappointment. Then she looked at me. "Camila," she whispered, "please, we can fix this. We can work it out amongst ourselves. Don't drag the police into this. Think of your father's name. Think of the restaurant. If people find out, people are going to find out anyway." "Mom," I said, kneeling beside her. "Because the bank wants their money in 30 days. I can fix it," Ethan insisted, stepping forward. "I have the buyer. If Camila just signs the transfer, the sale goes through, the loan gets paid, and we all walk away clean. Mom, tell her to stop this crusade and let me handle the exit." "I am not signing," I said, standing up and facing him. "And neither are you," I turned to Dana. "I want the accounts locked down, now." "Way ahead of you," Dana said. "I can draft a demand letter for the bank immediately to freeze the operating account due to suspicious activity." "You can't do that," Ethan yelled. "Payroll is on Tuesday. If you freeze the account, the checks bounce, the staff walks, you will kill the business." Then you better hand over the admin passwords right now, I said. I will authorize payroll, me, not you. I am taking over the financial controls effective immediately. No check over $500 goes out without my physical signature. Ethan laughed. A harsh, jagged sound. You think you can just walk in and run the place. You don't know the vendors. You don't know the codes? I learn fast, I said. And I know enough not to send $8,000 a month to a mailbox in Dover. Mom, Ethan pleaded, turning back to her. Stop her. She is humiliating me in my own house. Mom looked at him, tears streaming down her face. She was trapped in the impossible space between two children she loved. She saw the evidence. She knew what he had done, but the instinct to protect her son, the boy she had raised, was fighting against the logic of the situation. Camila, Mom said softly, maybe we just let him sell. Just let it be over. I am so tired. Honey, I don't want a court case. I don't want the neighbors whispering that Frank's son is a thief. It would have been so easy to say yes. It would have been the path of least resistance. To just let him sell, pay off the debt, and let him scurry away into the shadows with whatever scraps were left. It would save Mom the embarrassment. It would save the family name from a scandal. But then I looked at the mantelpiece. There was a photo of Dad standing in front of the restaurant on opening day, covered in flour, grinning like he had just won the lottery. He hadn't built that place for us to sell it to cover up a lie. He had built it on integrity. I am sorry, Mom, I said, my voice steady. I love you, but I'm not doing this to hurt the family. I am doing this to save it. If I let him sell the building to cover his tracks, I am an accomplice. I won't let him steal Dad's legacy, and I won't let him steal my name. We are not solving this internally because he has proven he cannot be trusted inside the house. Ethan's face twisted into a snarl. You are a cold-hearted bitch. And you are a fraud, I replied. While we were locked in this standoff, I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. Lydia, who had been huddled in the corner chair crying, had stood up. She was moving toward the kitchen. Her phone pressed to her ear. She was whispering urgently, her hand cupped over the mouthpiece. I glanced at Dana. Dana gave me a microscopic nod. She had seen it too. She tapped her watch and then pointed at Lydia's retreating back. Follow the money. Follow the communication. I need air, I announced. I grabbed my purse and stepped out onto the front porch, leaving the suffocating atmosphere of the living room behind. The cool autumn air hit my face, drying the sweat on my forehead. My hands were trembling. I leaned against the railing, trying to regulate my breathing. I had just declared war on my brother. I had just denied my mother's dying wish for peace. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email. The notification showed it was from a generic, encrypted service proton mail. Subject, the real deal. I frowned and opened it. Ms. Green, you don't know me, but I used to work the line at HH. I heard you are back. You need to know what is actually happening. It is not just a liquidation. Ethan isn't selling to a developer to build condos. He is in advanced talks with the Scorched Earth team from Burger Barn Holdings. They are a national fast food franchise. They don't want the building. They want the zoning permit. The contract stipulates that the structure must be demolished within 14 days of closing to make way for a drive-through. Also, there is a non-compete clause in the draft. It says, no member of the Green family can operate a food service business within 50 miles for 10 years. He is not just selling the building. He is selling your right to ever work in this town again. He needs you off the deed because the franchise compliance officer flagged the dual ownership. Check the consulting logs for a user named J. Miller Acquisitions. That is the rep from the franchise. Do not let him sign. I lowered the phone. A drive-through. He was going to turn Dad's hand-built cedar bar, the place where half the town had gotten engaged or celebrated graduations, into a grease trap for a national chain, and he was going to ban me, ban Mom from ever opening so much as a lemonade stand. He wanted to erase us. I looked back through the window. Ethan was kneeling by Mom now, holding her hand, probably spinning more lies, probably telling her he found a nice family to take over the place. The hesitation evaporated. The guilt vanished. I pulled up the contact for Marcus Thorne, the attorney. Do it, I whispered to myself. I dialed his number. He answered on the first ring, even though it was a Sunday. "Marcus," I said. "It is Camilla." "How did the meeting go?" he asked. "File the injunction," I said. "File it first thing tomorrow morning, and Marcus, I need you to prepare a second packet." "What kind of packet?" "A formal complaint for the District Attorney's Economic Crimes Division," I said. "I am sending you a digital file with evidence of embezzlement, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Camilla," Marcus said, his voice grave. "Once we ring that bell, you cannot unring it. This becomes a criminal investigation. Your brother could go to jail." I looked through the glass one last time. I saw Lydia come back into the room. She nodded at Ethan. Ethan looked relieved. They were planning their next move. They were probably thinking they could still outmaneuver me, maybe fake another document, maybe bully Mom into signing a power of attorney. They had no idea that I wasn't playing their game anymore. "I know," I said to Marcus, "but he made his choice when he signed my name. Now I am making mine." "Okay," Marcus said. "I will have the courier at the courthouse at 8 o'clock. Thank you." I hung up the phone. I didn't go back inside immediately. I stood on the porch and listened to the wind in the trees. The internal resolution was dead. The time for keeping the peace was over. I wasn't just the sister anymore. I was the plaintiff. And tomorrow, Ethan was going to learn the difference between a family spat and a federal offense. Monday morning did not begin with a bang. It began with the quiet, rhythmic thud of a date stamp hitting a piece of paper at the county clerk's office. At 8 o'clock sharp, my attorney, Marcus Thorne, filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order and a lis pendens against the property of Harbor and Hearth. In legal terms, a lis pendens is a suit pending notice. In practical terms, it is a giant red flag planted in the front lawn of a piece of real estate that screams to any potential buyer, "Do not touch this. If you buy this, you are buying a lawsuit." By 9 o'clock, the deal with Burger Barn Holdings was effectively dead in the water. No corporate legal team in their right mind would authorize a purchase of a property with a clouded title and an active fraud investigation attached to it. By 10 o'clock, we were sitting in a conference room at Marcus's office. It was neutral ground, smelling of lemon polish and old leather. On one side of the mahogany table sat me, Marcus, and Dana. On the other side sat Ethan and his lawyer, a man named Samuel Gantry, who wore a suit that was slightly too shiny and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ethan looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, and he kept picking at a loose thread on his cuff, refusing to look at me. "This is an aggressive move, Ms. Green," Gantry started, opening his briefcase. "Filing an injunction against your own brother, blocking a sale that would have saved the family from financial ruin. It looks vindictive." "It is protective," Marcus replied calmly. "My client is a 50% owner. She did not consent to the sale, and she certainly did not consent to the debt that necessitated it. We dispute the characterization of the debt," Gantry said, waving a hand dismissively. "Ethan Green has been the sole operating manager of Harbor and Hearth for 3 years. He has put in sweat equity that far exceeds the monetary value of his sister's share. He kept the doors open. He managed the staff. He dealt with the crisis." Gantry leaned forward, fixing me with a look intended to shame me. "While you were in the city, Ms. Green, living your life, your brother was keeping your father's dream alive. Now you swoop in at the 11th hour, having contributed nothing to the daily operations, and claim you are being cheated. The law recognizes the value of labor. The funds you are calling embezzlement were equitable compensation for a manager doing the work of 2 owners." It was a good narrative. It was designed to make me look like the greedy, absentee heir coming home to cash out. I felt a twinge of guilt, the old familiar sting of not being there when Dad died. But then I looked at Dana. Dana didn't care about narratives. Dana cared about math. "Compensation is taxable," Dana said, her voice cutting through the room like a cold draft. "Compensation is reported on a W-2 or a 1099 form. I have reviewed the restaurant's payroll filings for the last 3 years. Ethan Green's declared salary was $60,000. The amount of money that left the operating account and ended up in entities controlled by him or his associates is closer to $400,000. "Disputed," Gantry said quickly. You can dispute the intent, Dana said, sliding a binder across the table. You cannot dispute the transaction IDs. We had organized the evidence chronologically. It was a timeline of theft. Exhibit A, Dana said. January 20th, $3,000 transferred to Apex Strategic Consulting. The LLC was formed 6 days prior. The registered agent is a mailbox. Exhibit B, she continued, flipping the page. March 15th, payment of $4,500 to Apex. That same day, a transfer of $2,000 goes from Apex to Carter Vance, who, I might add, is not a consultant, but a college friend of Mr. Green with a background in sports marketing, not restaurant management. Ethan flinched at the mention of Carter's name. And finally, Dana said, landing on the page that made Gantry pause. Exhibit C, the flow of funds to LG Design Studio. She pointed to a graph. Lydia Green received $45,000 in 11 months for marketing services. We pulled the tax returns for her studio for the previous 5 years. Her average annual revenue was $800. Unless she suddenly landed a contract with a Fortune 500 company, this is a fraudulent conveyance of assets. Gantry picked up the paper. He frowned. He hadn't seen this part. Ethan hadn't told him about Lydia. Clients always lie to their lawyers, and it always bites them in the end. Ms. Green, Gantry said, shifting his strategy. My client admits that the bookkeeping was informal. He was under immense stress. Perhaps he overpaid for certain services, but that is a civil matter. It is a dispute over the valuation of services. It is not grounds for holding the property hostage. It is not informal bookkeeping. I spoke up for the first time. It is theft. Gantry looked at me. Ms. Green, let's be realistic. You want to save the restaurant, fine. But you cannot run it. You are not here. Ethan is. If you destroy him, you destroy the business. Surely we can come to an agreement where he retains management, and we structure a repayment plan for any overages. He forged my signature, I said. Allegedly, Gantry said. No, Dana corrected him. Forensically. She pulled out the audit logs. This was the moment where the he said, she said ended, and the binary code began. We subpoenaed the metadata from the DocuSign platform used to secure the $300,000 loan, Dana said. The loan that is currently in default risk. She pointed to a line of code highlighted in yellow. The signature for Camilla Green was executed on May 12th at 2:15 in the afternoon, Dana said. At that exact moment, Camilla was physically located in a board meeting in Seattle. We have sworn affidavits from 3 witnesses and her flight records. Someone could have signed it for her with her permission, Gantry argued weakly. The audit log shows the device used to sign, Dana said relentlessly. It was an iPad Pro. The device ID matches the serial number of the iPad registered to the Harbor and Hearth inventory system. The IP address is the restaurant's secure Wi-Fi. Furthermore, Dana added, delivering the blow we had found late last night. The account used to access the document wasn't Camilla's. The user logged in as admin, and the recovery email for that admin account, it was changed 2 days prior to the signing. She turned the page. It was changed to Ethan G. Private Gmail.com. The room went silent. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to get louder. Gantry looked at the paper. Then he looked at Ethan. He closed his folder. I need a moment with my client, Gantry said. They left the room. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My hands were shaking under the table. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was nausea. This was my brother. We were meticulously dismantling his life, piece by piece, document by document. You are doing fine, Marcus whispered to me. Stay strong. They are going to come back with an offer. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Ethan walked in alone. He looked smaller. Somehow, the arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, frantic energy. Can we talk? He asked. Just us family. Marcus looked at me. I nodded. 5 minutes. Marcus and Dana stepped out. Ethan sat down. He didn't look at me. He looked at the table. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. Cammy, he said. His voice was cracked. The loan, it was supposed to be a bridge. I made some bad calls on the futures market. Personal stuff. I got in a hole. I thought I could trade my way out of it, but it just got deeper. I took the loan to cover the margin calls. I thought I could pay it back before you ever noticed. You gambled the restaurant, I asked, my stomach churning. Dad's restaurant. I was going to fix it, Ethan insisted, his eyes pleading. The sale to Burger Barn, it was the only way out. They were offering $2 million. It would cover the loan, cover the vendor debts, and leave enough for Mom. I was trying to save Mom from finding out I blew it. So you decided to frame me instead, I said. You were going to let everyone believe I forced the sale. You were going to let me be the villain. I was desperate, he said. Look, Cammy, I can't go to jail. Lydia, she didn't know everything. She just did what I told her. Don't punish her. He leaned across the table. Here's the deal, he said, lowering his voice. I will sign over 60% of the equity to you. I will step down as manager. I will just be a silent partner. You drop the lawsuit. You drop the investigation. We tell Mom it was a clerical error, a misunderstanding. We refinance the loan together. You want me to help you pay back the money you stole? I asked. I want you to help me stay out of prison, Ethan hissed. I am your brother. Doesn't that mean anything? I looked at him. I remembered the day Dad died. I remembered Ethan holding my hand at the funeral. I remembered thinking we were in this together, but then I looked at the file on the table, the forgery, the lies to Mom, the fake company. Contribution doesn't create a right to steal, Ethan, I said softly, and being family doesn't give you immunity for destroying what Dad built. I am offering you peace, he said. Silence. Nobody has to know. Silence is expensive, I said. Dad paid for this place with his life. He worked every day until his heart gave out. You want me to pay for your crimes with my silence? That is too high a price. What? Ethan sneered, pulling back. You are going to send me to jail. You think Mom will ever forgive you for that? I am not sending you to jail, I said, standing up. The evidence is, you built this cage. Ethan, I just turned on the light. I opened the door. Marcus and Dana walked back in. No deal, I said to Marcus. Proceed with the discovery phase. Ethan stood up. He looked at me with pure venom. You will regret this. You think you are so smart with your charts and your logs, but you don't know everything. I know enough, I said. Ethan stormed out, gantry trailing behind him, looking like a man who knew his billable hours were about to dry up. What now? Dana asked, packing up her files. Now, Marcus said. The court compels them to hand over the rest of the data. That was just the preliminary hearing. Now we get access to everything. Emails, texts, the full server backup. He is going to try to delete it, I said. He knows the admin login is the smoking gun. Let him try, Dana said. The injunction we just filed includes a preservation order. If he deletes a single byte of data from this moment forward, it is spoliation of evidence. It is an automatic guilty verdict in a civil trial and an obstruction of justice charge in a criminal one. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. I saw Ethan getting into his car. He was slamming the steering wheel with his hands. He was panicking. He realized that his story, the sad tale of the failing business and the noble brother, had just been shattered by the unfeeling reality of technical truth. He couldn't charm the audit logs. He couldn't gaslight the IP addresses. But as I watched him drive away, I felt a cold knot in my stomach. Ethan was a cornered animal, and as Dana had warned me, cornered animals don't just run, they bite. He mentioned something, I said to Dana. He said, I made some bad calls on the futures market. He wasn't just stealing to live. He was gambling. Dana stopped packing. She looked at me. If he has gambling debts, she said slowly, then the $300,000 from the loan might just be the tip of the iceberg. And people who owe money to bookies or bad brokers, they get desperate in dangerous ways. We need to secure the physical building, I said. Tonight? I agree, Marcus said. I will call the sheriff to serve the order. But Cammy, be careful. He has nothing left to lose. I nodded. The legal battle was winning. But the war was far from over. I had stripped him of his mask, but I had also stripped him of his exit strategy. Now, I had to see what lay beneath the desperation. I picked up the red folder, the one with the forgery. Let's finish it, I said. The week after the court injunction was granted, the atmosphere at Harbor and Hearth shifted from a funeral wake to something resembling a field hospital. It was chaotic, loud, and urgent, but for the first time in a year, the patient wasn't terminal. I took a leave of absence from Briarstone Meridian. I traded my tailored blazers for comfortable knits and moved my office from the high-rise in the city to the back room that still smelled faintly of my father's pipe tobacco. My first act as the court-appointed temporary operator was to fire Apex Strategic Consulting. My second act was to hire Julian Thorne. Julian was a general manager I had headhunted from a competitor in the city. He was 50 years old, had eyes that missed nothing, and most importantly, he had absolutely no last name that mattered in this town. He wasn't a Green, he wasn't a friend of Ethan's. He was a professional neutral party who reported only to the numbers. "I need you to run the floor. Julian," I told him on his first morning, "I need to focus on the forensic cleanup. You keep the customers happy, and I will keep the creditors at bay." "Understood," Julian said. "But first, you need to talk to the staff. They are terrified. Half of them think the sheriff is coming to padlock the doors because of the rumors." I nodded. I called a mandatory all-hands meeting an hour before service started. The kitchen crew and the waitstaff gathered in the dining room. They looked tired. They looked skeptical. I saw Mike, the floor manager who had tipped me off, standing in the back with his arms crossed. I saw the sous chef, Leo, looking at his shoes. These people had been lied to for months. They had been told their jobs were hanging by a thread while my brother bought new cars and his wife renovated her studio. "I am going to keep this short," I said, standing by the host station. "My name is Camila. I know I have been a ghost for the last 8 years. I know most of you only know me as the sister who left. I am sorry for that. I thought the restaurant was in good hands, and I was wrong." The room was silent. "Here is the new reality," I continued. "Nobody is losing their job today. Nobody is losing their job next month. The restaurant is not closing. In fact, starting this payroll cycle, we are reinstating the overtime policy that was cut last year. If you work the hours, you get paid for the hours. No more banking time for later." A few heads lifted. "However," I said, meeting their eyes, "there is going to be a new rule, transparency. You do not work for me, and you do not work for Ethan. You work for Harbor and Hearth. If anyone asks you to cut corners, hide receipts, or falsify a log, even if it is me, you go straight to Julian. We are done with secrets." I didn't get a round of applause. I didn't expect one. Trust is a currency, and right now, the Green family was bankrupt. But as they filed back into the kitchen, I saw Mike nod at me. It was a start. The real vindication, however, came from the numbers. With the consulting fees to Apex eliminated and the cash skimming stopped, the financial picture of the restaurant transformed overnight. It was like watching a garden hose that had been kinked for months suddenly uncoil. The water didn't just trickle, it rushed. By the end of the first week, I sat down with Dana to review the genuine profit and loss statement. "Look at this," Dana said, pointing to the bottom line. "Gross revenue for the week is $32,000. Food cost is running at 28%. Labor is high because of the overtime, but manageable. Camila, this place is printing money." He was stealing nearly $10,000 a week, I whispered, staring at the surplus. "And he was still paying the bills," Dana noted. "That is how strong this business is. It was supporting a thriving restaurant and a massive embezzlement scheme simultaneously, and it was still barely breaking even. Now that the leech is gone, you are looking at a 20% net profit margin. That is unheard of in this industry." It should have been a moment of celebration. I should have popped a bottle of champagne, but every dollar of profit felt like an indictment of my brother. He hadn't just stolen money, he had stolen the peace of mind of everyone who worked here. He had looked our mother in the face and told her we were destitute while he was pocketing a fortune. Speaking of Mom, the silence from the house was deafening. Elaine Green had not spoken to me since the ambulance left. She moved through the house like a ghost, making tea, folding laundry, avoiding my eyes. She wasn't rude, that wasn't in her nature, but she was distant. To her, I wasn't the savior of the business. I was the prosecutor of her son. One evening, I found her sitting on the back porch, staring at the dark garden. "Mom," I said gently, sitting on the swing opposite her. "The restaurant had a record week. We are going to be able to pay the mortgage this month without touching the reserves." Mom didn't look at me. She smoothed her skirt. "Ethan called today." My stomach tightened. "Oh, he sounds terrible." "Camila," she said, her voice trembling. "He is staying at a motel. He says you locked him out of the accounts. He says he can't even buy groceries. He has money." "Mom," I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "He took nearly $500,000 over the last year. If he doesn't have it, it is because he spent it or hid it." "He is your brother," she snapped, turning to me with sudden ferocity. "He made a mistake. He was trying to fix things. Why do you have to be so cruel? Why do you have to drag it through the courts? Can't you just let him pay it back over time?" "He forged my signature on a $300,000 loan that is due in 2 weeks," I said. "If I hadn't stopped him, we would have lost the building, Dad's building." "Your father wouldn't have wanted this," Mom cried. "He wouldn't have wanted his children destroying each other. He valued family above everything. He valued truth." "Mom," I said. "He valued honesty. You don't know what he would have wanted," she said bitterly, standing up. "You weren't here." She went inside and closed the door. Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. You weren't here. It was the weapon Ethan had given her, and she was using it with devastating precision. I needed to feel close to Dad. I needed to know I wasn't crazy for choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. I drove back to the restaurant. It was late, past midnight. The cleaners had gone. The kitchen was dark and quiet. I went into the office and knelt before the old floor safe. I had found the combination in Mom's recipe box earlier that week. Right to 24, left to 10, right to 5. Dad's birthday. The heavy iron door creaked open. Inside, it smelled of metal and dust. There were stacks of old deeds, the original liquor license from 1992, and a few velvet boxes containing service pins. And there, in the back, sat a thick manila envelope. It was sealed with red wax, Dad's dramatic flair. On the front, in his unmistakable block lettering, was written, "For my daughter, Camila. To be read when the water gets rough." I took it out. My hands were shaking. I sat in his leather chair, the leather cracking under my weight, and broke the seal. It wasn't a will. It was a letter, handwritten on the back of old menu drafts. "My dearest Millie, if you are reading this, I am gone, and things are likely a mess. I love your brother. You know I do. Ethan has a big heart, but he has always had a hunger in him that I could never quite feed. He looks for shortcuts because he is terrified that he isn't good enough to take the long road. I am writing this because I know you. You are the steady one. You are the one who checks the knots before you climb. I have a feeling that one day, Ethan is going to get himself into trouble that he can't smile his way out of, and you are going to be the one holding the rope. You will feel guilty for holding him accountable. You will feel like you are betraying the family by demanding the truth. Do not feel that way. Fairness is not cutting the pie in half, so everyone gets a piece. Fairness is making sure the baker doesn't burn down the kitchen. Protecting this place isn't about money. It is about protecting the people who walk through those doors looking for a warm meal and an honest hour. If you have to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your integrity, choose the integrity. The peace that comes from a lie isn't peace. Millie, it is just a pause before the war. Trust your gut. It is the only compass you have. Love, Dad." I put the letter down. Tears were streaming down my face, hot and fast. He knew. He had always known. He hadn't just left me a restaurant. He had left me permission. Permission to be the bad guy in the short term, so I could be the protector in the long term. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. The guilt that had been weighing on my chest for days began to lift. I wasn't destroying the family. I was fireproofing it. The next morning, I arrived at the restaurant with a new energy. I called Julian into the office. "We are expanding," I said. Julian raised an eyebrow. "We are in the middle of a lawsuit and a fraud investigation, and you want to expand?" "We need to control the narrative," I said. "Ethan is telling people we are closing. We need to show them we are growing. I want to launch a catering division, Hearth at Home. We take the chowder, the bisque, the prime rib, and we bring it to weddings and corporate events. It will require capital, Julian warned. New vans, warming equipment. We have the capital, I said, pointing to the weekly report. We are profitable, and I am going to front the rest from my savings to pay off the balloon loan. We are going on the offensive. We spent the next 3 days drafting the business plan. We designed new logos. We put up a banner in the window, now booking holiday catering. The town noticed. The whispers about bankruptcy started to fade, replaced by curiosity about the new menu. But Ethan wasn't done. On Thursday afternoon, Dana called me. "You need to check your mother's phone," she said. "Why?" "Because Ethan just pinged a cell tower near your house," Dana said, "and I am seeing activity on the local community Facebook page." I opened my laptop and went to the Town Voices group. There, at the top of the feed, was a post from an anonymous user, but the syntax was pure Ethan. Sad to hear that the new management at Harbor and Hearth is planning to fire the longtime kitchen staff and replace them with cheaper labor from the city. Support local. Don't let corporate greed ruin our town's favorite spot. The comments were already piling up. People were angry. They were confused. "He is poisoning the well," I said to Dana. "He knows he can't win the legal battle, so he is trying to destroy the customer base." "It is a scorched earth policy," Dana agreed. "If he can't have it, nobody can. And he is messaging your mother. I can see the metadata logs. He sent her 4 texts in the last hour." I drove home. I found Mom in the kitchen, clutching her phone. "He wants to meet," she said, looking up at me. Her eyes were red. "He says he wants to explain everything. He says you are misunderstanding the loan. He says he wants a family meeting, tonight, at the house." "He is lying, Mom," I said tiredly. "He is trying to manipulate you again." "He is my son," she cried. "And he says you are planning to fire everyone. Is that true, Camila? Are you turning the restaurant into one of those soulless corporate chains?" "No," I exclaimed. "I just gave everyone a raise. I'm launching a catering business." "Then tell him that," Mom pleaded. "Meet him. Talk to him. Please. For me." I looked at her desperate face. I realized that as long as Ethan had access to her, he had a weapon. He would keep twisting the knife until she broke. "Okay," I said. "I will meet him, but not tonight. Tell him to come tomorrow morning. I need time to prepare." Mom nodded, relieved. Thank you, honey." She went upstairs to call him. I stayed in the kitchen. I felt a cold resolve settling over me. Ethan wasn't coming to talk. He was coming to gaslight. He was coming to play on Mom's fears one last time. I remembered the safe. I remembered there was something else in there. When I had found Dad's letter, I had noticed a second, smaller envelope tucked underneath the velvet pin boxes. I hadn't opened it then because the writing on the front was strange. I drove back to the restaurant one last time. I opened the safe. I pulled out the second envelope. On the front, in Dad's handwriting, were 7 words, "Only open when they start lying about you." I held the envelope in my hand. It was thin. It felt like it contained a single sheet of paper. Ethan had started the lies. He was attacking my reputation. He was turning the town against me. He was terrorizing Mom with falsehoods about my intentions. I took a letter opener from the desk. I sliced the top of the envelope. I pulled out the paper. It wasn't a letter. It was a legal document, a copy of a document, notarized and dated 5 years ago. I read the header. First codicil to the Revocable Living Trust of Frank Green. I read the first paragraph. My eyes widened. I read the second paragraph. My breath hitched in my throat. I sat back in the chair, staring at the paper. Dad hadn't just left me advice. He had left me a trapdoor. He had anticipated the exact nature of Ethan's greed, and he had written a fail-safe into the very DNA of the inheritance. "Oh, Ethan," I whispered to the empty room, "you really should have read the fine print." I folded the document and put it in my pocket. Tomorrow wasn't going to be a negotiation. It wasn't going to be a family therapy session. It was going to be an execution. The conference room at Marcus Thorne's law office felt smaller than it had on Monday. The air was heavy, recycled, and thick with the unspoken knowledge that this was the end of the line. Ethan sat across from me, looking less like a defeated man and more like a gambler who thought he had one last ace up his sleeve. He had brought Mom again. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, clutching her purse as if it contained the last of her nerves. Beside Ethan sat Samuel Gantry, his lawyer, who was arranging his papers with the slow, deliberate movements of a man charging by the minute. "We have reviewed the discovery request," Gantry began, his voice smooth. "And while my client admits to some procedural errors regarding the loan, we believe a settlement is in the best interest of all parties. A prolonged trial will only bankrupt the estate and tarnish the family name." Ethan leaned forward. He didn't look at me. He looked at Mom. "I am willing to step down as manager," Ethan said, his voice trembling with practiced humility. "I will hand over operations to Camilla, but I want to retain my 50% ownership stake, and I want a guarantee that no criminal charges will be filed. I did what I did to save the business. The town knows that. If you prosecute me, Cammy, you are prosecuting the guy who kept the lights on." It was a bold play. He was banking on the rumors he had started the lies about me firing staff and bringing in corporate chains to pressure me into a peaceful resolution. He thought I would be too afraid of public opinion to destroy him completely. "Is that the offer?" I asked quietly. "It is a fair offer," Gantry said. "Ethan keeps his equity. You take control. The family stays intact." I looked at Mom. She was watching me, her eyes pleading. "Just say yes." Her expression said, "Just end it." I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a lawsuit. I didn't pull out a forensic audit. I pulled out the thin, weathered envelope I had taken from the safe the night before. "I am afraid that offer is impossible," I said. "Not because I won't agree to it, but because you do not have the legal standing to make it." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about? I am a beneficiary of the trust." "Not anymore," I said. I slid the single sheet of paper across the polished mahogany table. It made a dry, rasping sound. "What is this?" Gantry asked. Picking it up, he adjusted his glasses. "It is a notarized codicil to Dad's living trust," I said. "Dated 5 years ago. Dad wrote it shortly after he was diagnosed. He never showed it to us. He left it in the safe with a specific instruction, only open when they start lying about you." I looked at Ethan. "You started lying about me on Thursday." "Ethan, so I opened it." Gantry read the document. His eyes widened. He stopped midway down the page, his mouth opening slightly. He looked at Ethan, then back at the paper. He slowly placed it back on the table, pushing it away from him as if it were radioactive. "What does it say?" Ethan demanded, reaching for it. "Read paragraph 4. I said. Ethan snatched the paper. He read it. I watched his eyes scan the lines. I saw the moment the words hit him, his face drained of color, turning a sickly, ash gray. His hands began to shake, rattling the paper. "This can't be real," he whispered. "It is very real," Marcus Thorne said from beside me. "I notarized it myself." Frank was very specific about the language. "Read it, Ethan," I said. "Read it out loud so Mom can hear." Ethan couldn't speak. He just shook his head. "I will read it," Dana said, taking the paper from his trembling fingers. Her voice was steady and clear. "In the event that any acting trustee or beneficiary is found to have knowingly falsified financial records, misappropriated funds for personal gain, or encumbered the assets of the trust without unanimous consent, said individual shall immediately and irrevocably forfeit their entire beneficial interest in the Harbor and Hearth estate." Dana paused, letting the weight of the legalese settle in the room. "Such interest shall revert to the remaining beneficiaries. This clause is self-executing and requires only proof of malfeasance to be triggered. My legacy is built on integrity, and it shall not be owned by anyone who cannot uphold that standard." The silence that followed was absolute. "It means," I said, looking directly at my brother, "that we don't need to negotiate your 50%. Ethan, you don't have 50%. You lost it the moment you forged my signature on that loan. According to Dad's rules, you own 0% of the restaurant. You are not an owner. You are just a debtor." "He knew," Ethan whispered. He looked up, his eyes wide with horror. "He knew I would do it. He knew you liked shortcuts, I said softly. He knew you had a hunger in you that made you dangerous. He didn't write that to punish you. Ethan, he wrote it to stop you. He knew that if you ever crossed the line, you wouldn't stop until you burned the whole place down. This was the emergency brake. No, Ethan stammered, standing up. No, you can't do this, Mom. He is stealing my inheritance. Mom was staring at the table. She reached out and took the paper. She touched Dad's signature at the bottom. Frank, she whispered. She looked up at Ethan. For the first time, the blinders of motherly love seemed to fall away, replaced by the clarity of her husband's judgment. Frank Green was a fair man. If he had written this, he had done it for a reason. He didn't steal it, Ethan, Mom said, her voice cracking. You threw it away. I did it for us, Ethan screamed, desperate now, the walls closing in. Lydia, tell them we did it for the family. Lydia, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly stood up. She looked at the sinking ship that was her husband, and she made a calculation. I didn't know about the codicil, she said, her voice high and shrill. And I didn't know about the forgery. Ethan told me it was all legal. He said the money was his bonus. Lydia. Ethan stared at her, betrayed. And Carter, Lydia continued, backing toward the door. It was Carter's idea. Carter set up the LLC. He said it was a tax loophole. I just designed the cards. I am a victim here. Sit down, Mrs. Green, Dana said coldly. We have the emails between you and Carter Vance discussing the structuring of the payments to avoid IRS flags. You are not a victim. You are a co-conspirator. And as for Mr. Vance, Dana checked her phone. The district attorney's office picked up Carter Vance at the airport an hour ago. He was trying to board a flight to Cancun. He is currently trading information on your husband in exchange for a plea deal. Ethan slumped back into his chair. He looked at Gantry. Do something, Ethan pleaded. Gantry closed his briefcase. Mr. Green, the codicil is ironclad, and with the criminal investigation into Mr. Vance active, my advice to you is no longer about saving your equity. It is about saving your freedom. The fight went out of Ethan. He put his head in his hands and began to sob. It wasn't the dignified weeping of a martyr. It was the ugly, jagged crying of a child who has finally been told no. The agreement we signed an hour later was not a negotiation. It was a surrender. Ethan formally acknowledged the activation of the forfeiture clause. He agreed to a court-ordered repayment plan for the $300,000 loan, which would be garnished from his future wages at whatever job he could find that didn't involve handling money. He was permanently barred from the premises of Harbor and Hearth. In exchange, I agreed not to press for maximum prison time, allowing the district attorney to offer him probation and community service, provided he paid back every cent. It was the mercy Dad would have wanted consequences, but not total destruction. When we left the office, the sun was setting. Mom walked beside me to the car. She looked older, frailer, but also lighter, as if a heavy burden of pretense had been lifted from her shoulders. He really knew, Mom said softly. Your father. He knew everything before it happened. He knew people, I said. He knew that money changes them. And he knew that sometimes, to save a family, you have to break the illusion of it. I am sorry, Camilla, she said, stopping on the sidewalk. She took my hand. I blamed you because it was easier than blaming him. I wanted to believe he was the hero because he was the one who stayed. But staying doesn't matter if you are tearing down the house from the inside. It is okay, Mom, I said, hugging her. It is over. We are safe. 2 months later, the sign in the window of Harbor and Hearth didn't say for sale. It said grand reopening, celebrating 35 years. The restaurant was packed. The smell of roasted garlic and searing steaks filled the air, mixed with the laughter of a town that had almost lost its heart. The new catering vans were parked out back, emblazoned with the logo, Hearth at Home. I stood by the bar, watching the service. Julian was at the pass, expediting orders with military precision. The staff moved with a new confidence, knowing that their paychecks were real and their managers were honest. Mom was sitting in the best booth, surrounded by her friends. She was laughing. She looked over at me and raised her glass. I smiled back. I walked over to the small alcove near the entrance where we had set up the memorial. A black and white photo of Frank Green hung on the wall. He was laughing, holding a giant striped bass. Below the photo, inside a small glass case, rested a black fountain pen, the Mont Blanc he had given me. It was the pen I hadn't used to sign the sale. It was the pen I had used to sign the new charter, the one that enshrined transparency and integrity into the bylaws of the company. I touched the glass. "We did it, Dad," I whispered. "We kept the lights on." Ethan was gone. He had moved 3 towns over, working in construction. We didn't talk much. But last week, I received a check in the mail for $200. The memo line just said, repayment. It was a start. Lydia had moved back in with her parents. The divorce was pending. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. The loans still had to be paid down, and trust took time to rebuild. But as I looked around the room, at the families breaking bread, at the legacy that was breathing and alive, I knew we had made the right choice. Revenge isn't always about destroying your enemy. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to let them destroy you. It is about proving that the truth, no matter how painful, is the only foundation strong enough to build a future on. My brother wanted to liquidate the past. I chose to invest in the truth. And looking at the full dining room, I knew that was one investment that would pay dividends forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, justice, and the power of a father's foresight. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening while driving, cooking dinner, or maybe relaxing before bed? Please let me know in the comments below. I love reading your stories. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please make sure to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach even more people who need a reminder that the truth always wins. See you in the next video.